been trying to get this guy here for at least a couple of years. So we've been friends online through the Fossil Forum for a number of years, and I have been an admirer of his journey. And so that's what I wanted Jared to come and talk about. You may have seen him on Instagram and TikTok and all those social medias and stuff, or you may not have, which some of you are not exactly that tech savvy, but we love you anyways. But I have been entranced by watching him transform from an amateur fossil hunter, which most of us are, to turning into a professional paleontologist. And so that's really what I wanted him. Oh, you're on your track. And so that's what I wanted him to come and talk about, was kind of transitioning from what we tend to do just as amateur fossil hunters to the proper world of paleontology. So he is studying at Texas A&M. And are you working on bachelor's or?
I'm a bachelor's still, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
For now.
For now, exactly. You know, who knows where you go after this. But he has made some astounding discoveries, and so he's going to talk about some of the things that he has found and papers that he's going to be working on. So big hand for Jared.
Thank you. Is this the right slider?
Yeah.
Okay.
It might not work. You might have to click around.
All right, we'll try our best. Well, it's good to finally meet y'all. I've actually technically been a member of the society for a little while, but I usually work when we meet. So this is my first meeting I've actually been to, but it's nice that I get to present on the best speaker. So anyway, like Jamie said, I'm Jared Cooke. I'm an A&M student doing my undergraduate right now. I'm a little bit of a super senior, but that's what happens when you're part-time. And hopefully the goal from here is to move into grad school. So UT maybe, we'll see. I'll do the ultimate betrayal, but Jackson School of Geoscience is great, so I can't complain. And perhaps SMU, we'll find out. But let's just get going, because I have a bunch of slides today.
Oh, yeah.
If this works.
Maybe flip onto that. It should work. It's just, I think you have to change the focus.
There you go. All right. So I had a little bit of a different start than most folks who are into paleo, I think, did. Usually this story you hear is that you've been interested since a little kid. And I did go through that same dinosaur phase that every 5 or 6 year old goes through. It lasted me a couple years and then it just petered out. And for the rest of my childhood, teenage years, everything, I was interested in other stuff. It was usually natural science related. I went through a phase where I was a herper for a long time. So I would go out, take photos of snakes and amphibians and whatnot. And I kind of stumbled into paleo just by chance. I was 19. The snakes were all brumating. I was pretty bored and I was in need of a new outdoor hobby. And I recalled that I found some oysters in what I now know is the Edwards Formation that I realized I didn't know anything about. And I did a little bit of Googling. And I remembered that there was a mosasaur that you guys are very familiar with, the Onion Creek mosasaur, that I saw in a museum. That wasn't too far from here. And so the rabbit hole that I fell into, that probably all of us fell into at some point, started this way. I think my fate was sealed with a chance reading of a National Geographic article about the Ediacaran biota, which to me, biologically, it's difficult to go from understanding ecosystems today full of life and snakes and being a herpetologist and ornithologist to just thinking about a barren earth with these gelatinous simple creatures and nothing else. And so I was properly hooked and I started my first researches on the fossil form and they were pretty embarrassing. Here was my first post ever. We had a friend of my stepbrother, a coworker, telling us that he found this fish in Austin. I was born in Austin and I saw that and I thought, man, this is some cool stuff. Clearly it is not from Austin. This is a Nightia from the Green River Formation in Wyoming, but I couldn't tell. And so this was my first ever post. And it's kind of hard to look at now, but that's what it is.
You just got a border in there.
Oh yeah. Anyway, so I had a tough time, very hard learning curve, because I feel like people find snakes all the time, even when they don't want to. I would say herping's probably a good bit easier than fossil hunting is. And it took me maybe 5 or 6 months to start actually finding even a shark tooth. So I would go out of my way, Here is Waco Pit, a Cretolamna catoxodon from the Waco Pit. This is the first shark tooth I ever found. But before I even found my first shark tooth, I actually had an odd stroke of luck, a Tylosaurus prorigor tooth from not too far away from here, actually. I was driving by that creek on the way here, and I was like, huh, small world. But yeah, Tylosaurus prorigor tooth found before even my first shark tooth. But that's how things fall. I like beginner's luck. It works for me. Or it
Big
did work for
raspberry to
me.
you.
To be fair, it's kind of funny. I have never found, to this day, an isolated mosasaur tooth in the Ozan of this quality so far. So
Yeah.
it is beginner's luck.
Is such a thing.
It does. You'll see soon how it happened more. So I forgot to mention, this was about 19 when I started getting interested. So for me, that was 2020. And in 2021, I started kind of fossil hunting, and that's when I found these first things that you guys are seeing here. And I made my first significant find, which I actually brought today. There's a part of it. So my first significant find was a Hadrotus premaxilla. Now, I don't know about y'all, but if I didn't tell you that and you were looking at this, I would have no idea what this is. In fact, the reason I was at that site is I was hoping to find some Ice Age material. I wasn't even looking for Cretaceous animals. And so seeing this, I got my hopes up thinking it was a cat tooth. It is not. It's actually from a very rare, large-bodied pycnodont relative. You guys, if you have the North Sulphur River guidebook, you'll see there's brief mention of it. They have these little hook-shaped teeth in their throat. And this is a very rare taxon. I wasn't quite sure what I was looking at, but it caused quite a buzz. So some points to go over about this. I didn't even know the formation, and I'll get into that a little bit soon because more of it was found, thankfully. And it was originally ID'd as Hadrotus hulidii. Now, Kuhn Ebersol in his 2024 monograph of Alabama fishes addressed this briefly, and he sunk H. hulidii. So it's probably Hadrotus priscus. There's one other species from Kansas called Hadrotus marshii, but you need the spenial to be able to differentiate those species. So for now, this is just Hadrotus spa. But this was my first significant find, found in August of 2021. The next month was a mosasaur in the Eagle Ford Formation. This was found with my stepbrother and I. I think we can barely take halvesies on this one. Some things to point out just from the photos that you're looking at, because it can be hard to orient yourself. I can't share updated prep photos for research purposes just yet. Right here, you're looking at the top of the quadrate. We didn't know what that was at the time, but top of the quadrate, now we know. This right here is the atlas vertebra. Here's the axis vertebra behind it. And it was found looking for shark teeth. A flab was lifted up, and we had this crumbly looking bone beneath us. So my stepbrother and I, yes?
Explain to those that might not know what a quadrate is.
Quadrate is the ear bone in a mosasaur. So if you were to think of a lizard, like an anole from the side, right behind the eyes, towards the back of the skull, there's this little hollow. If you were to peel away the skin, you'd see the ear complex of that animal. And so in mosasaurs, they have a big old ear bone. It's very useful for IDing different species. But anyway, so we find this, and though I was a complete noob, I did recognize that it was probably a mosasaur. I didn't know how rare mosasaurs were supposed to be in the Eagle Ford Formation, but we shortly found a tooth. And over the next little while, we had quite a few digs. In this top right photo here, you can see my dad on the left, John Jackson at the top came and helped us out with a few of these. And over the next few months in this very, very hard limestone-like shale, I did eventually find some of the tail as well, which I can show because it's not particularly diagnostic. And so moving on from here, I contacted Dr. Michael J. Olson at SMU, who is a mosasaur researcher. He was very pleased about this, and we had lots of runs where we tried to get the rest of this animal out. It took about, I would say, a year and a half from the initial discovery to the final dig that we've done to get it out. All sorts of things like weather happened. And finally, we can say that most of it is out, and largely to the help of John Jackson, who was guiding us at the time. So this specimen was nicknamed Olive, and here's some points about Olive. Like I said, we contacted Dr. Mike Polson, and this was my first just dipping my toe into the academic pool. The upper Eagle Ford Formation here in Austin is the South Bosque member. And in the equivalent formation in North Texas, you have the Arcadia Park member of the Eagle Ford, from which Russellosaurus coheni and Dallosaurus turneri are known. Those are the two oldest mosasaurs known from North America until the recent discovery of Ceratosaurus. But in Texas, this is as old as it gets. The Turonian was right when the first basal mosasaurs started radiating. Now, as for Olive, she is disarticulated and broken, but the bones that do preserve are well preserved. So we have enough there to at least be able to put together a model again and get a sense of how Olive looked. We have most of the skull, the neck, lots of body vertebrae, and some of the tail. As far as we can tell, there are no limbs yet, but we do have some large blocks with scraps of bone, so there's always a chance as preparation continues. And like I said, co-occurred with Russellosaurus and Dallosaurus. What's particularly exciting, I think, is that Olive is a new genus and species of mosasaur within tribe Russellosauria. This includes the Tylosaurines and the Plioplatycarpines. So hopefully going to be an important specimen. We haven't run any phylogenetic analysis yet, but the shale was very hard and lots of acid prep has been going on and on and on and on. And there are other discoveries that have kind of slowed down some of the attention given to Olive, but nonetheless, a paper hopefully will be out this year. I've been saying that for the past 2 years, but hopefully this year will be out.
That's actually.
How big is she?
So if I had to make a, just based on the dennary, size estimation, it's probably a 14-foot animal. So very similar to Russellosaurus. Russellosaurus is, the holotype is a subadult, but 12 feet. As you will see, she is slightly bigger than Gracie, who is another find coming up soon.
Yeah, that was the one that Lee Schnell talked about.
Yeah, he gave a presentation. Yes, Gracie makes a feature here. So anyway, so that was in September of 2021. I met Mike Polson for the first time, and from here, I was just kind of going full tilt into fossil hunting. I was studying here at ACC at the community college in Austin. I had a lot of time since I was living at home, didn't have to pay my own rent or anything, it was great. And I spent as much time out in the field as I could. I tried not to drive super far when I could help it, but this is Texas, there's gonna be a lot of driving. Went up to SMU constantly to talk with Dr. Polson, and even now, especially as a noob, but even now, trying to learn about mosasaurs from him is like drinking out of a fire hose. It's pretty much impossible to soak in everything, but we're making slow progress. And I started on my social media at this point. So on TikTok at the time, now I do a little bit of YouTube and a lot of Instagram as well. I just kind of record my fossil hunts and how it looks to turn into a paleontologist. There's a good chance some of you guys might even recognize this bluff, which is not too far from here. So April 1st, 2022, on April Fool's Day. At this point, I was oblivious of invertebrates. I was well acquainted with mosasaurs, but I was walking in the Dassault Formation, which is, I know, a favorite of the late Eric Rose. He was actually telling me that I should start investigating it. And I had no intention of finding invertebrates. I was hoping to find some Tychodus teeth. But I find these two little nodules, unprepared. They did not look this nice. And I'm like, oh, cool, sea urchin. Put it in my pocket. Kept looking for shark teeth. It was until I put it on a fossil ID, onto the fossil ID forum, the forum later on, and got a very excited, enthusiastic response from like Jamie and John Jackson and all of them, that I realized, okay, this might be something special. So turns out in the Dassault Formation, siderid spines are not uncommon, but siderid tests are very uncommon. I happened to find both of these the same day. Beginner's luck.
With an Aristotle lantern.
With an Aristotle's lantern, yes, this is the second one. This one was eroding out of the matrix. You will see in person, because I brought them today, the smooth side is what was exposed. This was nicely in the matrix. This one was a pebble. I kind of picked it up on a whim. I don't know what attracted me to that pebble, but I picked it up and went, oh, there are bumps. It's another sea urchin in the pocket. Completely pearls to swine, but I'm glad I found them because now I have an appreciation for them. These photos were taken by John Jackson. As you can probably tell, he's excellent with his photography skills. And that left the next step of getting these ID'd, potentially my third scientific discovery. Or scientifically relevant discovery. And so I jumped into echinoid literature, which I would say most paleontology literature is a huge mess, but especially echinoid literature. So some points from this. Yes, it was found in the Dassault Formation, and Young and Woodruff, 1985, date the Dassault, placing the Santonian boundary within the lower quarter to lower third of the formation, and the Campanian boundary in the upper 2/3 or upper 3/4 of the Dassault. So I'm not quite sure whether it's Santonian or Campanian yet. There are not any nice bentonites that you can date, but it's around there. And after much deliberation and pulling my teeth in the literature and looking at the echinoid directory, I eventually settled on Stereocitrus sceptrifera. I would like to say that John Jackson also had this ID way before me, but he didn't want to tell me. He wanted me to look at it, and I'm glad he did because I got to jump into the literature. Eventually, I found Dr. Natalia Fouquet. She has done some research on siderids. Siderid researchers are even rarer than siderids, so I was very pleased to find somebody who could tell me a little bit about it. And her ID is on the European species of Stereocitrus intermedia, quite similar to Sceptrifera. Stereocitrus intermedia is from the Coniacian through the Santonian, whereas Sceptrifera is from the Coniacian through the Campanian, but both are European species. As far as I can tell, this is the first occurrence of I'll call it Stereocitrus intermedia because she definitely knows more than I do, but of either. If it is either of them, it is the first occurrence of it in Texas. And
have you talked to Bill Thompson?
not yet. No, I know he has.
He's got one that looks like this.
I'd love to talk to you later.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, he gives me the dirt.
Excellent, excellent. But anyway, yes, it's either a possible range extension of Stereocitrus intermedia or perhaps an undescribed species. There are some spines that I would like to go and find in the Dassault, and both of these taxa are different based on their spines as well, so we can see whether it's one species in there or both. And by the way, those are going to be donated either to UT or SMU. It depends if I get into one grad school or the other school. So, June 2022, those siderids are found in April. This is found in June. And at this point, I've been posting my fossil hunting adventures on social media for some time. And I made friends with Harrison Duran, who has a gargantuan following on TikTok, over 1 million. Quite a few on Instagram and everything else. He's one of the giants of paleontology on social media, and I looked up to him for a while. And so when he followed me, I did geek out a little bit. And then he invited me to come and join him in the Dakotas, which I eagerly took up. It was an excellent time. We were in North Dakota hunting Hell Creek Formation, but also the Bear Paw, because that would be pretty weird in Hell Creek Formation. We had views like this basically all of the time of those Hell Creek Badlands. We didn't find that much, but it was kind of okay. I would say the peak of it was this Edmontosaurus rib, and that turned out to be nothing compared to our eventual South Dakota trip. But for now, this was a very formative adventure.
Sorry, I just had a quick clarification. You said Hell Creek, right?
Hell Creek in
Yeah, the Maastrichtian one, right?
yes.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, thanks for the clarification.
Yeah, no problem. But anyway, this was fun. It was a little bit outside of my research interest. It was kind of just hobby fossil hunting for me again, and made some cool videos. And to this day, I am lifelong friends with most of these people. So that was a great time. And I also decided to fully commit to paleontology as a career at this point. Then came the April after, where I had the most successful single day of fossil hunting I've probably ever had. I don't know how many of you know Chris Howe. He is a fossil preparator up in Dallas. He did a lot of work on olive originally before olive was donated to SMU. And he's also the discoverer of Fleximornis howii, the oldest bird known from North America up in the Woodbine Formation. The Perot has a nice exhibit for Fleximornis. Anyway, Chris Howe is a legend that probably doesn't need much more introduction. He also found Pentagnon Myas fritchi with his friend Joe Fritch, which is also on display at the Perot. It is a perfectly articulated 6-foot new species. It's beautiful. It's a plethy. But anyway, I reached out to him asking about the Woodbine Formation because I was getting a growing interest in dinosaurs from my Oak Creek experience. And he offered to take me out. We didn't find much in the Woodbine. Then he goes, you know what? I have an Eagle Ford spot. Let's go take a look. We had less than an hour and a half at this Eagle Ford spot. But the very first find, as you can see right there, within 5 minutes of looking in this creek, was a coniosaur bird. I pulled it out, thinking it was isolated, as they usually are, and there was another coniosaur bird attached to it, freshly snapped in half. And then Chris and I both looked at each other like, oh. Fortunately, Chris is a fossil preparator, and I entrusted this to him. This is the last photo I got before my phone overheated. This was July in North Texas and very, very hot. So there are far more vertebrae. It went 17 vertebrae into the slab before we decided to just take the whole dang slab out. So when we took out this big slab, there's a little spot of bone on the other end, and we suspect we might have a complete coniosaur on our hands, which would be very rare for Texas. 30 minutes after that, this plesiosaur showed up. I wanted to bring the whole slab today. I just brought one of the vertebrae, this vertebra right there. That's at the end. And you know what? I'll jump into both. Each get their own slide. There's Chris right there when we were looking at this. So the Coniosaurus, it's not known from articulated cranial material. Even more poorly known in Texas. The genus was originally described from England in Turonian strata, and they kind of disappear after the Turonian. The Texan strata likely hosts multiple species. You guys might be familiar with finding their isolated vertebrae or denneries show up sometimes in the golden flags of the Eagle Ford or the Britain Formation, clearly, because this was in Britain, member up in North Texas. And if it is scanned and it does prove to have an entire skull, I might very conveniently have a master's thesis. That'll be nice. So let's cross our fingers. And yeah, it'll be scanned February 28th, not too long from now, so hopefully there'll be an announcement. And then the plesiosaur that came after, it is in a preposterously dangerous site. So I have not commenced a full-scale excavation of this. Here it is. I'm right there, crouched in, the bone layer right at the bottom. I know it doesn't look too steep, but that bank side goes all the way to the water. If that collapses, it is instant death. So I'm waiting on the creek bed to erode and hopefully give me a nice little landslide, and then I can start digging around in it. But in time, we did get out that block of plesiosaur vertebrae that I showed you originally. Now, yeah, waiting on weathering to take its toll. I visited it in January. It's a bit of a drive because this is also Britain Formation and I'm based in College Station. But yeah, on the way up, found this very nice plesiosaur tooth by chance. This is a spectacular sight. Now, if you guys have seen this tooth on the form, I did ID it as Brachiochenius lucasi, but I've been corrected by Mike Polson that I shouldn't be so quick because these apicobasal ridges do not converge, which is a trait of Brachiochenius and Megacephalosaurus. So this could be Brachiochenius maybe, but there's actually a good chance it's something else. The plesiosaur that I found is probably undescribed. So maybe it is part of the same animal. Who knows? Maybe there are multiple plesiosaurs in the Britain Formation, but we'll have to take on the stick to find out. And then, almost as an afterthought to this crazy summer, right afterwards, my friend Graham Payton from Baylor contacted me, seeing that I've been having adventures in the Eagle Ford. He asked, hey, why don't we go check out some Eagle Ford? I said, that's all right. And within 5 minutes, he was right in front of me, he found a Xiphactinus. Not just the skull, the whole animal, probably a 14-footer. This was his first time ever in the Eagle Ford. It's a little similar to how Christian and I found Olive, our second time ever in the Eagle Ford. So beginner's luck does really go through for everyone. Graham has since done the excavation of the skull on this, and it was the subject of his senior thesis. However, the rest of the 14-foot animal is in the bank because not in the bank, in the in the Creek side because there's a lot, when you go through a university like Baylor to do that, there's a lot of paperwork, a lot of bureaucracy, and things have been very slow. So that's usually why I just dig it up first and then I present it to the university.
Is that the jaw?
Yes, yes, you're looking at a, I'm not sure if that's a maxillary degenerative, I don't quite remember, but it was a scattered, disarticulated skull. I should have probably taken his photos from his thesis and put them up, but I didn't find anything, was curious afterwards. But yeah, this was the end of a pretty insane summer. And then I moved to College Station for 2023. And 2023 had no giant discoveries, I would say, but it did have a lot of interesting things. I had an internship with Mike Tolson, which is very convenient. We got to choose our mentor for this internship. And so I said, hey, I have one handy. This was a science communication mentorship. So I basically just did what I do anyway. I post about paleontology on social media. And I spent that summer doing some prep on Olive, which very painful prep. I cannot reiterate enough, but it was quite worth it. Some other small finds, maybe not small, but finds that I think were interesting, but not enough to donate are this very, very, very small jaw found in the Bowden Flags member of the Eagle Ford Formation, which after a lot of research, I am leaving at a juvenile goniophyllidid, which is a crocodiliform. I'm not aware of any crocodiles in the Eagle Ford Formation, so that would be very interesting. I originally was thinking it could be bird, but based on what I've seen from some specimens called goniophyllidid from the early Cretaceous of Spain and Wyoming, this is likely a small juvenile goniophyllidid. As a micro, it's probably the most interesting micro I've ever found. I actually brought it today if you guys want to see as well. And being in College Station, I obviously have access to Whiskey Bridge. So I found some nice shark teeth at Whiskey Bridge. I have a couple crabs from the Cooke City Formation around Whiskey Bridge as well that you guys can see. And lots of Tychodus, which has been my favorite shark of probably ever. I've never known Tychodus.
Those are gigantic.
Yeah, those are my biggest ones. Yeah. Yeah. I've never found a huge one in the Eagle Ford, unlike Lee. He's still the boss of that. These are all gravel finds. So not totally sure because these creeks have lots of formations, but just based on the ID, this is Tychodus marginalis, so it's probably Eagle Ford. Another Tychodus marginalis, probably also Eagle Ford. Yeah, Mortoni right here, and they usually, I've noticed they occur in the highest abundance in Coniacean stuff, so this will be Atco formation. And a decurrens, which I come across very rarely. I'm not totally sure, but it's probably also Eagle Ford. And so 2023 marched on and ended with a bang. You guys have seen Lee's presentation on Gracie. Gracie was insane. My old roommates are actually here. You remember when Gracie was found? I was having a conniption. I thought it was that escape class, and I drove all the way back, and we did the first dig on Gracie. So Gracie's tail was originally what was exposed. I think it is a beautiful sight. This is unbelievable.
Great photo.
It is a great photo, but it's a better specimen. And what's interesting is that Gracie was not found very far from Olive. They are sympatric. We are not allowed to show any prep updates on Gracie. I wish I can, but when the paper publishes, it is worth looking at because the prep is pretty spectacular. I will tell you what we have seen in the next slide. Here's a photo of the dorsal side of the skull. It's a little bit grainy, but that's okay. It's been cleaned up a little nicer since then. Some pics from the excavation. Head here, I think was great. This is the gut block, which potentially has gut contents. We know there was gut contents falling out of the bank when we found her. Hopefully there's more in that block. Some more pictures of the dig. We had to get pretty creative, making a sled, battling homeless people who were a little unhappy with our presence, but it turned out just all right. I got a nice big scar on my shin now from flipping that block and getting a big rebar scratch. So Gracie's
Made her mark.
yeah, made her mark for sure. And some things to consider about Gracie, which I'll go through very quickly because you already saw Lee's discussion on it. Gracie's also Turonian, so in addition to coexisting with Olive, she also coexists, like I said, with Russellosaurus and Allosaurus. Likely a new species, we're not totally sure on the genus yet, but likely a new species at least, but a different species than Olive. She is certainly a platycarpine mosasaur and also the most well-preserved Turonian mosasaur ever discovered, full stop, period. There are some Tethysaurus that are discovered in Morocco that are comparable, but most of those don't make it into public institutions, and the ones that do don't have things like soft tissue preserved, which Gracie has. Gracie has limbs, soft tissue, and gut contents. It will be a very explosive
What
paper.
soft tissue is preserved?
So far, we have cartilage, lots of cartilage of different areas of the body. I'm not totally sure if I'm allowed to say what kinds, but lots of cartilage to be found. The Turonian, we think, is a time of unprecedented mosasaur diversity. It used to be thought that this is just, you had a couple of them lying around competing with Brachopenius, but there seems like there were a lot. These are not the only mosasaurs known from the Turonian that are undescribed. There are more undescribed species that better skeletons need to be found of, and some have had good skeletons found in the Texas Turonian, waiting a description. So those will hopefully come, and I hope that this will be my particular research interest in the basal mosasaurs, since I'm so deep in it already. And then after that, I had my 2024 year. So this just happened. It went pretty slow, as it goes when you live in College Station and you're far away from social strata, but I had some successes. I met back up again with Harrison Duran in South Dakota. We had a much more explosive visit in the Hell Creek Formation this time. Found, I want to say 2 Triceratops skeletons, but one of them was in pretty tough shape, so I'm not quite sure I would call it a skeleton, but at least one of them right here. We found lots of Nanotyrannus teeth, and yes, I will only call them Nanotyrannus because that's my opinion. And right after that, I took 2 weeks off of school and went to my first conference in Maastricht in the Netherlands for the triennial mosasaur meeting, looking at a cast of one of the Prognathodon found there. And over winter break, coming back home, I was happy to find the rest of my Petrotus. I don't know if it's the rest of the skeleton, because there's no big bone block. It's just kind of falling out bit by bit. I can't quite find where the bone layer is. But it is a pretty incredible sight. I went there not so long ago with Jake, actually, who's right here. So it's pretty cool. And I have some bits of that Hydrotus here. It's motivated me to kind of hunker down on Hydrotus right now and stop working on Olive so much, just because right now we're waiting on acid prep for Olive, but this one's ready. It is the first occurrence of the fish in Texas, so that is the basis of this publication. And then from here, moving forward, what do I see for my future? I need to graduate A&M first, which is taking a while. Give me a second. But after that's done, I'm gonna start applying for grad schools. Right now, I have my eyes on UT as my top choice because I like being around Austin. But SMU would be great as well, and it's where my mentor is. Potentially Sol Ross out near Big Bend, because I would like to study the Boquillas formation. We will see.
Do they have a paleontology program there?
Yeah. Or they have some paleontology researchers that will
Mhm.
at least take you into student.
Interesting.
And yeah, I guess I'm gonna focus on mosasaurs. I have some projects in mind of Turonian mosasaurs that I would like to look at, seeming that we're doing some already. Those Siderids, I'm not gonna focus on Siderids, but I would like to publish on those if I can. I just need to decide whether it's worth it first. Is it a range extension? Is it a new species? I don't know. Siderids are hard. And continue with my social media in a new way. Most people on social media doing paleontology are like dudes finding megalodon teeth in South Carolina, and they don't tell you that much about it. It's just like, you don't necessarily learn that much. And I wanna try and do something different and also kind of show what it's like, because I have a very convenient video diary. You can see me going from complete noob to hopefully a professional one day. So that is what's on the horizon for me, and I'm happily trucking along. Thank you.